Something is wrong with Joel since we crossed into Nevada. I don't know what I did.
Welcome back to Creepy Crochet and Creepypasta. Let's get into today's scary story.
I'm writing this in the passenger seat while he drives. He doesn't know I'm writing it. Joel and I have been together for 3 years. He's the most even-keeled person I've ever known. The kind of person who gets calmer under pressure while everyone around him falls apart. I've never seen him rattled, not once. I say this so that you understand that what I'm about to describe isn't normal. This isn't him being moody or tired or stressed about work. Something happened. We left Portland 11 days ago. The plan was loose on purpose, drive south, cut east, see whatever we wanted to see. No itinerary. Joel's idea. He'd been talking about a real road trip for years, the kind where you don't know where you're sleeping until you're too tired to keep driving. I was nervous about that part. He talked me into it. The first week was everything he promised. We ate bad diner food and slept in motels with ice machines that rumbled all night and took detours for roadside attractions that were never worth stopping for, but somehow always worth stopping for. I felt like we were 22 again. I remember thinking somewhere outside of Crater Lake that I couldn't believe how lucky I was. That's the last time I remember thinking clearly. The second week we crossed into Nevada. I don't know how to explain what I mean when I say the light changed. Not the weather, not the time of day, the light itself, the quality of it became something different, flatter, like the world had been photographed instead of lived in. I felt it in my eyes first, then in my chest. A kind of pressure that wasn't quite anxiety and wasn't quite calm. Something in between. Something patient. Joel noticed it too. He got quieter. He started watching me in a way I couldn't put a name to. Not suspicious, not worried, more like careful. The way you are around something you don't fully understand. On our third night in Nevada, we pulled off the highway at a rest stop around 2 in the morning because we were both too tired to keep going. We reclined the seats and I fell asleep almost immediately. When I woke up, maybe 3 or 4 hours later, the passenger seat was empty. I found him standing outside, maybe 30 feet from the car, looking out at the desert. The moon was up. I could see him clearly. I called his name and when he turned around, I don't know, his face did something. Just for a second, like he had to remember what expression to put on before he looked at me. He said he needed air. He got back in the car. He didn't sleep after that. I could feel him not sleeping next to me for the rest of the night. We've been driving for 4 days since then. He doesn't touch me anymore. Not like we fought. He's not cold or distant in any obvious way. He still asks if I want coffee when he stops. He still laughs at things on the radio. But he doesn't reach for my hand. He doesn't rest his palm on my knee the way he always does on long drives. When I lean my head on his shoulder at a red light, he goes very still, like a person who has spotted something they're trying not to startle. Last night we stayed at a motel outside of Winnemucca. I woke up at some point in the dark and the room felt wrong in a way I couldn't name. Joel was asleep, or he looked asleep. I got up to use the bathroom and when I came back he was watching the door. Not the ceiling, the door. In the morning I found dirt on the bathroom floor. I hadn't been outside. Neither had he. Neither of us said anything about it. I went to look at myself in the mirror while he was loading the car. I do this more than I used to. Not sure when it started. I'll catch myself just standing there. Not doing anything, just looking. Like I'm checking something. Like I'm waiting for myself to do something I haven't done yet. This morning I stood there for a long time. I looked normal. A little hollowed out around the eyes, a little too still, but normal. When I turned off the light and went to leave, I saw my reflection in the dark mirror still standing there. I was already in the doorway. My reflection was still at the sink. I told myself it was a trick of the light. The angle. The way motel mirrors are cheap and slightly warped. I've been telling myself a lot of things for 4 days. Joel hasn't asked me once what I'm thinking. He used to ask constantly, used to say I had a face like a closed book that he was determined to read. He doesn't try to read me anymore. I think he already knows what's in there. I've been trying to remember the drive through that first stretch of Nevada. The night I don't have a clear account of. There are flashes. The sound the desert makes when it's completely silent, which is not silent. A rest stop bathroom with a light that buzzed and buzzed and buzzed. The taste of copper in the back of my throat. Waking up with my shoes on when I was certain I'd taken them off. I've been trying to remember if anything happened, if I did anything. If something was there in the dark between the scrub and the sky and got closer than it should have and I let it. I don't know why I keep thinking about that. I don't know what I think happened. But I keep looking at Joel's hands on the wheel. How white his knuckles are, how long he's been driving without asking to switch, without taking his eyes off the road ahead of us. I asked him an hour ago where we were going. He said home. I asked why we were going this way. We're heading further into Nevada, not toward the highway north, and he didn't answer for a long time. Then he said, very quietly, that he just needed to see something, that there was something he needed to understand. I asked, "What?" He said, "I'll know it when I see it." I've been watching the desert out the window since then. The light doing that flat thing it does. The scrub repeating in every direction until the mountains cut it off. It all looks the same to me. Every mile the same as the last one. I don't know what he's looking for. I don't know why part of me does. I'll update if I can. My dog came back wrong after being lost in the woods.
Welcome back to Creepy Crochet and Creepypasta. Let's get into today's scary story.
Back in October 2024, we had 3 dogs. A black lab named Baxter, a chocolate lab named Whiskey, and a yellow lab named Willow. They were all very energetic and loved being outdoors. We usually took them fishing and bird hunting with us. Well, one particular afternoon, we live in Montana, by the way, we were at a lake surrounded by woods and woods and woods. Me and my boyfriend were throwing sticks in the water for the dogs, and then everything went quiet, like something just hit pause on the earth. Me and my boyfriend looked at each other and then looked around. The dog stood dead still in the water, looking at the woods as if something was watching us. And then, out of nowhere, Baxter bolted into the woods as if something pulled him in, or he just wanted to run. Either way, he was the only one who bolted. Willow and Whiskey stayed dead still and just watched him. I ran after him because he's my pride and joy, and I've had him the longest. I screamed his name. My boyfriend, Evan, stayed with the other 2. I spent a good 2 hours looking for Baxter when all of a sudden I found him under a tree just sitting there, watching me, analyzing me. I looked at him. He was at least 25 yards away from me, and that should have been the first red flag, that he was just calmly sitting there as if he was waiting for me to arrive. I walked over, and I instantly knew something was off. His eyes looked almost human, and he wasn't panting, which was definitely strange because dogs should be panting after running. I shook it off, tied a leash around him, and brought him back to the truck. We loaded them up and headed home. Fast forward 2 weeks. Whiskey and Willow were acting off. They wouldn't go near him and they cowered around him. They didn't make eye contact or even eat around him. Every time he walked into the room, they would slowly leave the room. Like if they made a sound, it would set him off. One of the things that really set me off was that I would wake up and see him in the corner of my room just staring at me. One night I woke up and he was just sitting there. Not panting, just staring at me. After about 6 months of that, we went back to the place where it happened. I know what you're thinking. Crazy, right? Well, the second we got there, he bolted into the woods the moment we opened the door. But this time I didn't chase after him. I just watched him disappear. It's been 2 years now, and we haven't found him, and we don't plan to. My husband started leaving the room every time I walked in. Last night, I found out why. Marcus and I have been married for 4 years, together for 7. I want to be very clear about something before I get into this. My husband is not a cruel person. He's never been cold or distant or strange. He's the kind of man who remembers the names of every person he's ever met. He cries at commercials. He once turned the car around because he thought he'd been rude to a gas station attendant. I'm telling you this because what I'm about to describe is so completely unlike him that even now, sitting here writing this, I keep trying to find another explanation. It started in February. I came home from work and he was in the kitchen making dinner. Normal. I dropped my bag in the hallway, said I was home, and walked into the kitchen. Before I even rounded the corner, he'd turned the stove off and walked out through the other door into the living room. I assumed he needed something. I poured myself a glass of water and went to the living room to find him, but he wasn't there. I heard him upstairs. I called up asking if he was okay. He said yes, totally fine, just getting something. He came back down and dinner was normal. Conversation was normal. I forgot about it by the time we went to bed. But it kept happening. Not every day at first, maybe once or twice a week. I'd enter a room and he'd leave it. Not in an obvious or dramatic way, just quietly with a reason. He needed to check something, he forgot his phone, he was going to start a load of laundry. Always a reason, always calm. After about 3 weeks, I asked him directly if something was wrong. If I'd done something to upset him. He looked genuinely confused, almost hurt that I'd asked. Said, of course not. Said he loved me and I was imagining things. I believed him. I wanted to. But I started paying attention after that. Really paying attention. And the more I watched, the more certain I became. It wasn't random. It was every time. Every single time I walked into a room he was in, within 30 seconds he was gone. He never left abruptly. It always looked natural. But he left. I started testing it. I'd walk into the bathroom, he'd go get water. I'd follow him to the kitchen. He'd remember something in the garage. I'd go to the garage. He'd get a phone call he had to take privately. I never once managed to be in the same room as my husband for longer than a few minutes. And the thing was, he didn't seem upset. He wasn't cold or mean. When we were in the same space, he was warm. He'd kiss my cheek in passing, he'd squeeze my hand. He seemed like himself in every way except for the leaving. I told my sister about it over the phone. She thought I was being paranoid. Men zone out, she said. He's probably just going through something at work. Maybe, but I don't think so. About 6 weeks in, I woke up in the middle of the night and Marcus wasn't in bed. Not unusual, he gets up sometimes when he can't sleep. I lay there for a while waiting to hear him come back. I didn't. After 20 minutes, I got up to go check on him. I found him in the hallway outside our bedroom door, just standing there, perfectly still, facing the door in the dark. "Marcus," I said. He turned around, slow, and he smiled at me. Normal smile, the smile I'd known for 7 years. "Couldn't sleep," he said. "Go back to bed. I'll be up in a minute." I went back to bed. He came back a few minutes later and fell asleep without a word. In the morning, he made breakfast and asked about my week, and I almost convinced myself I'd dreamed the hallway entirely. I didn't bring it up. I don't know why. Something told me not to. The leaving got worse in March. More frequent, less subtle. There were moments where I'd enter the living room and he'd stand up so quickly he knocked a drink off the coffee table. He apologized immediately, cleaned it up, laughed it off, but his hands were shaking. I started sleeping badly. I'd lie awake listening to him breathe and trying to figure out what I'd done, what had changed, what he knew that I didn't. 2 weeks ago, I came home early from work. My meeting got canceled and I was home by noon, which never happens. Marcus works from home on Fridays, so I knew he'd be there. The house was quiet when I came in. His car was in the driveway. I called his name. Nothing. I walked through the downstairs. Empty. I went upstairs and checked the office. Not there. I checked the bedroom. Not there. I stood in the hallway and just listened, and I heard it. A small sound coming from the guest room at the end of the hall. The room we basically never use. A low sound, almost like humming. I walked to the door and opened it. He was sitting in the corner of the room with his knees pulled to his chest, not doing anything, just sitting there in the corner of an empty room in the dark with the curtains closed. When the door opened, he looked up at me, and for just a second, half a second, barely anything, his face did something I had never seen it do before. Every muscle in it went slack. His mouth opened slightly, his eyes went wide. He looked terrified. And then it was gone. Just like that. Normal Marcus. He blinked and smiled and asked why I was home early and said he'd been taking a break from screens. I said, okay. I went downstairs. I sat at the kitchen table for a long time. That night I asked him again if he was okay, if there was something I needed to know, if he's sick, if he was scared or something. He took my hand across the table and looked me in the eyes and said I was the love of his life and everything was fine. His hand was ice cold. Last night I woke up at 3 a.m. and he was gone from the bed again. This time I didn't wait. I got up immediately and walked into the hallway. He was there again, same spot, same stillness, facing the bedroom door. But this time his back was to me, and this time he wasn't alone. I don't know how to describe what I saw standing next to him without sounding like I've lost my mind. It was dark, the shape of something, tall, facing the bedroom door the same way he was, completely still. I stood there for what felt like a full minute. Neither of them moved. Then Marcus slowly turned his head, just slightly, like he could feel me behind him, and in a voice I had never heard from him, quiet, strained, like it cost him something to say it, he said, "Go back to bed. Please." I went back to bed. I don't know what I saw. I don't know how to explain it. I've been sitting in this bedroom since 3 a.m. and it's now almost 7 and I have not heard him come back upstairs. I don't know if I should open this door. Update when I can. Update. It's been 3 days since I posted. I want to start by saying I'm okay, I think. I'm staying at my sister's right now, which is why I finally have the headspace to write this. Here's what happened when I opened the door. Marcus was sitting at the kitchen table, coffee in front of him, both hands wrapped around the mug, fully dressed, like he'd been waiting for me. He looked exhausted in a way that had nothing to do with sleep. Something in his face had changed overnight. Some tension I hadn't even noticed building had finally broken, and what was left looked very, very old. "Sit down," he said. Not a request exactly, not an order, just tired. I sat. He didn't say anything for a long moment. Then, "I need to tell you something, and I need you to let me finish before you say anything. Can you do that?" I said yes. He started talking. He told me it had been following him since January. He didn't know what it was. He still doesn't. He said it had started small, peripheral, a shape in a dark doorway, a reflection that lingered a half second too long, the feeling of being watched from somewhere that couldn't have anything in it. He thought he was losing his mind. Then he realized it wasn't interested in him. It was watching you, he said. It was always watching you. I was in the way. He said that was when he started leaving rooms when I entered them, not to avoid me, to see if it would follow, to test whether he could get between it and me without either of us knowing it was happening. He said that most of the time at work, he said it seemed confused by him, like it didn't understand why he kept intercepting it, like it had never encountered that before. What is it? I asked. He shook his head. I don't know, but it knows you. It knows your name. How do you know that? He looked at the table. Because at night it practices. I didn't say anything. That's why I was in the hallway, he said. If I stood between it and the bedroom door, it would slow down. It would wait. I don't know why, but it would wait. He looked up at me then, and his eyes were red. I didn't tell you because I didn't want you to be afraid. I thought I could manage it. I thought if I just kept getting in the way. He stopped. Marcus, I said, last night, what was it doing? He was quiet for a long time. I think it was getting impatient, he said. I went to my sister's that afternoon. Marcus is still at the house. He won't leave. He says if he leaves with me, it leaves with me. And he thinks that's worse. He says it's used to him now. He says he has a system. He calls me every morning at 7 a.m. on the dot. He called this morning. He didn't say much, asked if I slept okay, asked about the weather where my sister lives. Before he hung up, he said, I love you. Don't come back yet. Then he said quieter, it's still learning your voice. I asked him what that meant. He said he had to go. He'll call tomorrow. He always calls. I'm not going back yet. My late husband left me specific instructions to follow after he died. I cried so much in the morgue parking lot I had to put on a sweatshirt to cover up my tear-soaked top. Inside, the medical examiner had me identify my husband. He said they were having difficulty determining the cause of death. After that, I collected his belongings. Most I expected, his wallet, watch, cell phone. Then there was the unexpected, an envelope with my name written on it. My husband always had the handwriting of a kindergartner, but even this seemed like he wrote it in a hurry. Back in the parking lot, I read that letter over and over. 100 times, memorized it. The last correspondence my husband left was 3 instructions. It went like this. When I return, play along. Sure enough, the next afternoon, as I was covering the couch in tissues, my front door unlocked. In entered the spitting image of my husband. I wanted to believe the morgue. Identifying his body was just a nightmare, that this was real. I wanted it to be real so bad, but it wasn't. And I didn't let on at all that I thought so. I ran to my husband and hugged him. He even smelled like him. He embraced me and held my neck how I liked and said, I'm home, the same as he always did. You've been crying? Oh baby, let me make it all better. How about I make your favorite food? And into the kitchen he went. He was just out of sight when I heard the pop of a wine bottle, just like I expected. 2. You can eat what he makes, but don't drink anything. I watched him make my husband's chicken cutlet recipe with the bucatini. I watched him make my husband's chicken cutlet recipe with the bucatini and the red sauce. He even knew about my fresh basil on the porch. He poured us each a big glass and set our plates down. I spun the noodles on my fork and ate. It was his recipe. Then the first crack in the armor. This thing that looked like my husband was shoveling noodles into his mouth, chewing mouth wide open like an animal. My husband would never do that. You haven't touched your wine. I'm just not in the mood for it. Ah. He got up and walked over to the counter. I saw his hand slowly inching towards the knife block. And here comes the part I've been dreading. 3. You have to trust me. He's going to try to kill you. Let him. I have a confession to make, he said, chef knife in hand, walking right up to me. One of his hands was on the back of my neck. The other held the point of the knife, just kissing my stomach. I was so afraid. I tried to push the fear away. In my head, I keep thinking, I trust you, I trust you. He made me look at him. I'm the one who left that letter on your husband. My neighbor knows things about me that he shouldn't. I've never told him anything. I'm writing this because I need someone else to tell me I'm not crazy. I moved into my apartment 8 months ago. 3rd floor, corner unit. I picked it because it was quiet and the building felt anonymous, the kind of place where people keep to themselves. That's all I wanted. Anonymous and quiet. My neighbor across the hall, Unit 304, is neither of those things. His name is Brian. I know this because he introduced himself the day I moved in, which, fine, normal. He helped me carry a box inside without asking if I wanted help, which felt slightly off, but I told myself he was just being friendly. He's maybe 50, average everything, height, build, face. The kind of person you'd walk past 100 times and never remember. The first thing that bothered me was small. About 2 weeks after I moved in, I ran into him by the mailboxes and he asked how I was settling in. I said fine. He said, Good. You getting enough sleep? Heard you up pretty late a few nights ago. I laughed it off. Thin walls, whatever, but I'm a quiet person. I don't watch TV loud, I don't have people over. If he could hear me, it was because he was listening for me. I told myself I was overthinking it. A month later, I came back from the grocery store and he was in the hallway. He looked at my bags and said, Oh, you found that new place on Clement Street? Good prices, right? I had gone to that grocery store for the first time that day. I'd never mentioned it to him. I had never mentioned any grocery store to him. I've had maybe 6 conversations with this man total, and none of them were about where I shop. I said, yeah, great prices, and went back inside and stood in my kitchen for a long time. I started paying attention after that. He knows my schedule. Not in a way I can prove, but in a way I feel every time I run into him, which is too often, at times that are too specific. He's always just arriving or just leaving when I am. He knows I work from home on Fridays. He knows I order food on Tuesday nights. He mentioned once, casually, that he'd seen me on my work calls. You always look so focused, which means at some point he'd seen me through my window because I never told him I work from home at all. I started keeping my blinds down. Last week was when it stopped feeling like coincidence. I was in the laundry room in the basement and he came in, which is fine, people do laundry. We made small talk. He asked if I'd heard from my sister lately. I have never mentioned my sister to him. I've never mentioned any family to him. I asked him what he meant. He smiled. The same easy, unbothered smile he always has. Said he thought he remembered me mentioning her once. Said never mind, he must have been mixing it up with someone else. I said okay. I finished my laundry, I came upstairs. I checked my door when I got back. Locked. Deadbolt chain. I've been thinking about it for 6 days and I cannot remember a single conversation where I mentioned my sister. I cannot explain how he knows I have one. There's a woman I've been seeing coming and going from his apartment maybe once a month. Youngish, dark coat, always looks tired. I assumed girlfriend. I smiled at her once in the elevator and she didn't smile back, just looked at me with this flat expression, like she was somewhere else entirely. I haven't seen her in about 6 weeks. I don't know if that means anything. I don't know if any of this means anything. But this morning I was leaving for a coffee run and Brian was in the hallway. He looked at me and said, "You look tired. Didn't sleep well?" I slept fine, I looked fine, I had not said a word to him. He just smiled and went back inside his apartment. I stood in the hallway alone for a second before I walked to the elevator, and I don't know why I did this, but I looked back at the door. The peephole went dark. He was watching me leave. Update. My neighbor knows things about me. I want to start with something small because that's how it always starts. My doormat moved. I have a specific way I leave it, slightly angled, left corner flush with the baseboard, because after Brian I started doing things like that. Little anchors. Ways of knowing if something had shifted while I wasn't looking. Last Tuesday I came home from my coffee run and the mat was straight. Not kicked, not bumped. Straightened, kind of precise that takes intention. I stood in the hallway for a while before I went inside. That was the small thing. Here's the thing that isn't small. I found the woman in the dark coat. Her name is Renata. I know this because I did what I probably should have done weeks ago. I started asking around. Not about Brian specifically. Not at first. Just casual conversations with the 2 neighbors I've exchanged more than 12 words with. I mentioned I've seen a woman coming and going from 304. Asked if anyone knew her. The woman in 302 went quiet in a way that told me everything before she said anything. She said Renata used to live in my apartment, Unit 303. She moved out about 10 months ago, which is 2 months before I moved in. She didn't give notice. She was just gone one day, lease broken, deposit forfeited, a few things left behind that management had to clear out. The neighbor said she'd always seemed fine, normal, friendly, and then toward the end she'd seemed like someone who hadn't been sleeping. Jumpy. She stopped making eye contact in the elevator. The last time the neighbor saw her, she was loading a single bag into a car that wasn't hers. She didn't say goodbye to anyone. I asked if she knew what happened. The neighbor looked at the floor for a second. She said she always figured it was something with the man across the hall. Said she never had proof. Said she hoped wherever Renata landed she was okay. I went back to my apartment and sat with that for a long time. I don't have proof either. I want to be clear about that. I have a moved doormat and a neighbor who knows things he shouldn't, and a woman who fled an apartment that is now mine. None of that is proof. I know how it sounds. But here's what I can't stop thinking about. When Brian mentioned his sister, he smiled. That uneasy, unbothered smile. Like he was giving me something. Like he wanted me to know that he knew, and he wanted to watch me figure out that he wanted me to know. This isn't about information. He doesn't want to know things about me. He wants me to know that he knows them. There's a difference, and it took me until now to understand that. I went to the building manager yesterday, told him everything. He listened with the expression of a man counting the minutes until a conversation ends. He said he'd look into it. He said Brian had been a tenant for 6 years with no complaints. He said if I felt unsafe, I should call the non-emergency line. I called the non-emergency line. An officer came, took my information, told me to document everything and call back if anything escalated. She was kind about it. She also couldn't do anything. Last night I couldn't sleep. Around 1 a.m. I got up for water and stopped in my hallway for no reason I can name. Just stopped and stood there in the dark. And I heard, from directly across the hall, one slow, deliberate knock on the inside of his door. Not a knock like someone knocking to leave. A knock like someone letting you know they're there. Then silence. I stood in my hallway for 20 minutes. I didn't hear anything else. I went back to bed and lay there until it got light. I've started looking for a new place. I haven't told anyone in the building. I've not mentioned my sister to Brian. I've never mentioned my sister to anyone in this building. I've been going back through every conversation we've ever had, word by word, and there is no version of events where he could know I have one. Unless he's been somewhere I haven't thought to look. I'll update when I can. I found my own exhibit at a serial killer museum. For anonymity's sake, I'm not gonna say which city I'm in. However, I will say we recently had a museum centered around serial killers open up, and from the moment I learned about it, I knew I needed to go. I'm such a true crime junkie. Visiting the museum wasn't even a question for me. I bought my ticket and off I went to explore the minds of the depraved. The place was filled with all kinds of memorabilia. Jeffrey Dahmer's glasses, Ted Bundy's hacksaw. Hell, they had things in there that belonged to killers I'd never even heard of. Take the chessboard killer, for example. If you've never heard of him, he was born just outside of Moscow. His whole vision was to kill one person for each of the 64 squares on the chessboard. He claims that he made it to 61 and solemnly swore to hit the 64 mark before he left this world. They had his chessboard, people. Do you understand how absolutely fascinating that really is? So much desire, such a will to accomplish his goals. It was inspiring, really. I hoped to one day achieve that level of dedication. See, if I'm recalling correctly, which, who am I kidding? I know I am. My count is currently 17. It may seem low to you, but I promise I'm working to boost those numbers. I mean, I kinda have to, especially now that I've seen the pitiful excuse for an exhibit this museum has given me, calling me the no-name killer. It's almost insulting. More than anything, though, it's just fuel. I did like that they included some of my calling cards, though. That part was cool. A molded cast of my shoe print. Some of the old Polaroid pictures I took, my crutches. That last one actually brought back some beautiful memories. Limping over to that pretty young lady and asking if she could help me load some groceries into my car. Ah, those were the days. I'm not nearly as sloppy anymore, though. They were lucky to have found those crutches. Me now would have never let my urges get in the way of tidying up a crime scene. That day, though, I think I was just too ravenous. I was starting to get some weird looks from the museum staff for staring at my exhibit for too long. It was just so nice to see the early stages of what would soon become the highlight of the whole museum. Nevertheless, however, I had to move on. I spent about an hour or two making my way through all the displays, all the paraphernalia. When I left, it was like a part of me was relieved. Disappointed that I wasn't a bigger deal yet, sure, but still relieved because I knew. I knew that when all is said and done, I was going to be too hard to ignore. Most of my followers submitted stories are scary, but it's rare that they come with a photo that is this creepy.
Welcome back to Creepy Crochet and Creepypasta. Let's get into today's scary story.
I think I ran into a demon. Okay, so I've always had, and still have, an intense feeling of dread whenever I'm left alone in the dark. I have always hated the thought that I don't know what or who is with me because I can't see in that situation. I don't necessarily believe in the paranormal. Actually, I just don't think I allow myself to believe in it. Anyway, now for the actual story. This happened in my house, specifically on the top floor in my parents' bedroom. Instead of normal doors that open to reveal clothes in the walk-in closet, there are mirrored sliding doors that move side to side to access the clothes. Remember that for later. It was later in the day, around 6:30 or 7 p.m., and my sister had stayed up all night the night before, so naturally she was asleep during this time. She was asleep in my parents' room with the lights off. My mom had just finished making dinner, so she told me to wake my sister up to eat. I entered my parents' room and the lights were off. I was in the process of trying to get over my fear of the dark, so I didn't turn them on. I walked up to the bed and shook my sister's shoulder. My sister has always been stubborn when it comes to waking up, so she only stirred slightly at first. I continued trying to wake her, but I quickly realized she wasn't going to wake up unless my mom came in herself. I got up from the bed, and before you think that I wasn't uncomfortable in the dark at that moment, trust me, I was. When I stood up, I looked around the room. My eyes landed on the walk-in closet momentarily, my reflection staring back at me from one of the mirrors in the darkness. I looked away quickly, suddenly feeling extremely anxious, though I continued looking around, trying to become desensitized to the dark. I turned my gaze to the desk on the left wall. I forgot to mention there was a large computer sitting on it. I also forgot to mention that because it was winter, it was completely dark outside, so no light was coming through the window. I looked into the computer monitor. It wasn't turned on, so the screen was completely black. That was when I saw it. Rather, them. In the reflection of the monitor, I saw myself with the walk-in closet behind me. What I saw reflected in the closet still haunts me to this day. Standing partially behind one of the mirrored doors was a tall, black and white, demon-like creature. Its skin was black with patches of white, its legs long, and its arms reaching nearly past its knees. Its face, however, was what terrified me the most. Unnaturally long, its chin stretched downward. It was smiling. The smile stretched all the way toward the top of its head, not wide but tall. Its neck was black and unusually large as well. Skin on its face, however, was white. Black patterns traced across it. Its eyes were large and completely black, though a tiny white glow shone within them. It also was outlined in black, though inside the black outline was white patterns as well. But that wasn't the only thing I saw. I saw an eye, a floating eye. The color looked drained yet somehow still vibrant. The eyeball was bloodshot, a pale shade of pink, and the pupil was completely black. The strangest thing about it was that it had bug eyes, purple shadows beneath it. The floating eye was nearly as large as the black and white creature, though it was still definitely larger than me. I was frozen. This was the exact thing I feared. My eyes immediately welled up. I wasn't crying yet, but they started burning. As my vision blurred with tears, the black and white creature suddenly appeared closer. It continued creeping forward until it was standing right behind me. My heart stopped. My sister was still asleep, unaware of any of this. I couldn't make a sound. I was seeing everything through the reflection of the black computer screen on the desk. Finally, I snapped back into reality and immediately ran out of the room, not even turning around to check if the two creatures were really there or if they were just shadows created by the dark screen. I knew it was real. I knew it was real because I felt a cool breath on my shoulder from the creature behind me. I ran into my bedroom, went straight into the bathroom, and threw up, crying and practically hyperventilating. I didn't sleep a wink that night. I begged my sister to sleep in my room with me since I have 2 beds. However, I also have my own walk-in closet. The only reason I don't think I saw anything in there was because I left my bedroom door open and kept all the lights on. The reason I remember so many details about the creature is because when I finally started sleeping again, it appeared in my nightmares. Every night. I haven't told my family about this, but every night I hope and pray my parents stay safe because the entire encounter happened in their room. That was a few months ago. But sometimes I still swear I see shadows moving when no one is there. Hi, I'd like to submit a true horror story that happened to me in 2025. This happened not long after I moved in with my boyfriend, now my fiancé. We live in the Netherlands. At first, everything was normal. The first 2 months felt peaceful. We were just settling in, learning each other's habits, building a routine. Nothing strange, nothing out of place. Until the 3rd month. We decided to visit an old castle a few hours away from his town. It wasn't planned, just something spontaneous. But when we got there, the atmosphere felt off. It was covered in mist. Not the calm kind, but the kind that makes everything feel too quiet, too still. And the entire time I was there, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching me. I didn't think much of it at first, but when we got home, I searched the place online. It was rumored to be haunted. That's when things started. My fiance works afternoon to late night shifts, so I'm often home alone until midnight or even later. At first, it was small things. That same feeling like I wasn't alone. Then I started noticing shadows from the corner of my eye. Every time I looked directly, nothing was there. Until one night. It was around 1 a.m. He was working overtime and I was in bed scrolling on my phone. The door was open so my cats could come in. From the corner of my eye, I saw something at the doorway. I thought it was one of my cats, so I looked. Nothing. I went back to my phone, trying to ignore it. Then I saw it again. But this time, I realized something was wrong. There was no body. Just a head, slowly peeking from the side of the doorway like something was hiding behind the wall but leaning just enough for its face to be seen. When I turned to look, it didn't disappear. It was still there. A head, not attached to anything. And even though I wasn't wearing my glasses, I could see it clearly. Sunken black eyes, wrinkled skin, and no mouth. I don't know how, but I knew it was a woman. After a few seconds, it disappeared. I was terrified. I shut the door, prayed, and stayed in my room until my fiance got home. When I told him, he didn't believe me. A few days later, I was alone again. The house was completely still, no wind, all windows closed. Then suddenly, the hanging lamp in the living room started moving. Only the lamp, nothing else. I ran to my room and locked the door. Then I heard loud banging, over and over. I started praying out loud and texted my fiance to come home immediately. When he arrived, we prayed together in every room of our house. After that, everything stopped. No more shadows, no more sounds. But I still remember that face, and how clearly I saw it, even when I shouldn't have been able to see anything at all. And the worst part is, it never had a body. Thank you for your time. My boyfriend has been acting terrified of me since we got back from the Appalachian Trail. I don't know what I did wrong.
Welcome back to Creepy Crochet and Creepypasta. Let's get into today's scary story.
I need to write this down because I feel like I'm losing my mind, and putting it somewhere outside of my head might help. Dane and I have been together for 4 years. We're the kind of couple that finishes each other's sentences, that has a whole private language of inside jokes and shorthand. I know him better than I know anyone. I say that because I need you to understand that when I tell you something is wrong with him, I'm not being paranoid. I know this man. We got back from a section hike on the Appalachian Trail 11 days ago. We did about 200 miles over 3 weeks, starting in Virginia. It was Dane's idea. He'd always wanted to do a long stretch, and I had never done anything longer than a weekend trip. I was nervous. He was so excited he could barely sleep the week before we left. The first 2 weeks were incredible. Hard, but incredible. We fell into a rhythm. We'd hike until late afternoon, set up camp, cook whatever dehydrated thing we'd packed, and lay on top of our sleeping bags talking until one of us fell asleep mid-sentence. I felt closer to him out there than I ever had. No phones, no obligations, just the two of us and the mountain. It was the 3rd week when things started to feel off. I don't know how to explain it except to say that the woods changed. Not visibly. Everything looked the same trail, the same trees, but the quality of the air felt different. Thicker somehow, like the atmosphere had shifted by a degree you couldn't measure but could feel in your chest. Dane felt it too. He got quieter. He'd always been the one pointing things out to look at the ridge, look at that bird, but he stopped. He just hiked. Eyes forward, jaw set. On the 4th night of that week, I woke up in the middle of the night and he wasn't in the tent. I found him standing about 20 feet away at the tree line, just standing there looking into the dark. I called his name and he turned around so fast it startled me. He looked, I don't know, not scared exactly, more like he'd been caught doing something. He said he needed to use the bathroom. We went back to the tent. He didn't sleep after that. I could feel him lying awake next to me all night. We finished the hike 2 days later and drove home. I thought once we were back in our apartment with our things and our routines, he'd return to himself. He hasn't. He flinches when I touch him. Not every time, but enough that I've started hesitating before I reach for him. Last week I came up behind him while he was doing dishes and put my hand on his shoulder, and he made a sound, not a word, just a sound, and stepped away from me. He apologized immediately, said he was jumpy lately, blamed it on bad sleep. He's not sleeping. I hear him up at all hours, but when I get up to check on him, he always comes back to bed right away, says he's fine, and lies there stiff as a board until I fall asleep. He started locking the bedroom door at night. We share a bedroom, we share a bed. For the past 6 days, I've been waking up on the couch with no memory of getting there and the bedroom door locked from the inside, and Dane on the other side of it claiming he has no idea how I ended up in the living room. He says I must be sleepwalking. He says it gently, the way you say things to someone you're frightened of. I asked him last night to please just tell me what was wrong. I sat across from him at the kitchen table and asked him to look me in the eye and tell me what I had done. He looked at me for a long time. His jaw worked. I watched him decide something. He said, "You haven't done anything. I've just been in my head since the trail. I'm sorry." He reached across the table and squeezed my hand. He let go after less than a second. I went to the bathroom after dinner and stood at the sink for a long time. I looked at myself in the mirror. Normal. Tired. A little thinner than before the hike, but normal. I turned the faucet on and splashed water on my face. When I looked up, I was smiling. I hadn't smiled, I wasn't smiling, but my reflection was, for just a second, just long enough for me to see it wearing an expression I hadn't put there. Wide and still and patient. Then it was just my face again. I told myself it was the lighting, the water in my eyes, but I've been thinking about the 3rd week on the trail, how the air changed, how I have no clear memories from those last 2 days of hiking, just flashes, a strange taste in my mouth, a sound like something large moving parallel to the trail just past where the trees got thick, waking up outside the tent once with dirt under my fingernails and no explanation. I've been thinking about how Dane stood at the tree line that night, how he looked when he turned around, the sound he made when I touched his shoulder. I've been thinking about the mirror. I've been telling myself I need to ask him what he saw on that trail, what he's been seeing since we got back. But there's another part of me, quiet, patient, underneath, that doesn't want him to answer. That part doesn't want him to say it out loud. I don't know what that means. I don't know if I should be scared of what's happening to Dane or scared of something else entirely. I just know that last night I dreamt about the woods, the smell of them, the dark. And when I woke up, I was hungry in a way I've never been before, a way I don't have words for. I don't know how to end this post because I don't know what I'm even asking. I guess I just needed someone else to know. I'll update when I can. It's been 2 days since my first post. I'm writing this from my car, parked outside a Walgreens 3 miles from our apartment. I've been sitting here for 40 minutes. I don't want to go back inside. Let me try to explain. 4 days ago, I finally got Dane to talk. Really talk. I'd waited until Sunday morning when the light was good and ordinary and the apartment smelled like coffee and there was noise from the street outside. I think I chose that on purpose without realizing it. I needed us to feel like regular people in a regular place. I sat across from him and I said, "Tell me what you saw on the trail." He looked at his mug for a long time. Then he said, "I saw you." I told him I didn't understand. We were both on the trail. Of course he saw me. He shook his head. "The last 2 nights, after you were asleep," he finally looked up. "You were outside, just standing at the edge of the tree line, same spot both nights, just standing there looking in." I told him that was impossible. I told him I'd woken up with dirt under my fingernails and no memory of getting outside. Yes, but surely that was sleepwalking, stress, the strangeness of being in the woods for 3 weeks. "You weren't asleep," he said. "Your eyes were open, I called your name, you turned around." He stopped. I asked him, what did I look like when I turned around? He picked up his coffee mug and held it with both hands and said, very quietly, "You were smiling." I've been going over my first post obsessively since then, reading it like it belongs to someone else. I keep landing on the same line. That part doesn't want him to say it out loud. I wrote that. I know I wrote that. I remember the feeling of it, something low and settled in me, something that felt like patience, like waiting. I don't feel that way right now. Right now I feel sick and cold and very awake, but I'm scared of how quickly it could come back. Here's what I know, or what I think I know. The memories from the last 2 days of the hike are still mostly gone. What I have are fragments. The taste I mentioned before, copper and pine sap, a sound from deep in the trees, the dirt under my nails. And one image I didn't write about the first time because I'd convinced myself it wasn't real, standing in the dark, looking at the tent from outside, yellow nylon glowing from the headlamp Dane always left on, and feeling something that I can only describe as assessment, like I was deciding something. I thought I was remembering a dream. I don't think that anymore. I haven't been trusting the time between when I close my eyes and when I open them. I've started setting my phone to record audio. I tell myself it's to check for sleepwalking. Last night there were 4 hours of silence, and then at 2:14 a.m., the sound of the bedroom door opening, footsteps, the front door, then nothing for a long time, then footsteps back, the bedroom door again. When I woke up, I was in bed. I felt fine, rested, almost good. There was a single small leaf on the pillow next to me, dried, brown-edged, something from late fall, even though it's spring. I don't know where it came from. I don't know why when I found it, my first instinct wasn't to be frightened. My first instinct was to put it in my pocket. I didn't. I threw it in the trash. I stood at the bathroom sink and looked very hard at my own reflection and waited to see what my face would do. It just looked back at me, tired, a little scared. But I waited a long time before I was sure. I called my sister this morning. I don't know what I was going to say. I hadn't planned it. I just needed to hear her voice, needed to be someone's sister for 5 minutes. She picked up on the second ring, asked how the hike had been, said she wanted to see pictures. I said it was good. I said I'd send pictures soon. She said I sounded weird. I said I was tired. She said, "You sound far away." Then she laughed a little and said, "Like the bad kind of far away." And I said I was fine and changed the subject. After we hung up, I sat with the phone in my hands and thought about how she'd said that. Far away. Like she'd felt a distance that wasn't just geography. I don't know what I'm becoming. I don't know if becoming is even the right word, or if it's more like revealing. Like something that was always in the woods found a door and the door was me. I don't know if that thing is only at the tree line now, or if it's at the table eating breakfast, if it's writing this post, if it's the part of me generating all this fear as some kind of performance to seem normal. I don't know how to know. Dane slept in the living room last night, of his own choice, on the couch. He's still here, he hasn't left. I don't think he can bring himself to leave. I don't think he fully believes it yet, but he puts a throw pillow against the arm of the sofa, and he slept there, and I lay in our bed alone and look at the ceiling. I'm going to ask him tonight to take me somewhere with a lot of people. Bright lights, noise. I need to be in a crowd and feel what it feels like. I need to know what I'm hungry for. I don't know if I want an answer. I'll update when I can. If this sounds different from the last post, if I sound different, please say something. I mean that. Please. I'm writing this from the bathroom, sitting on the tile with my back against the tub because the floor is cold, and I need cold right now. I need something that feels like fact. Dane filmed me. 3 nights, his idea. I'd asked to go somewhere crowded, and he took me to a diner, bright lights, sticky laminate menus, a woman at the counter with a laugh like a car alarm, and I sat in that booth and felt everything I was supposed to feel. Tired, overstimulated, glad when we left. Normal. I felt so normal I cried a little in the passenger seat on the way home. He put his hand over mine and didn't say anything, and for about 40 minutes I was convinced I'd been catastrophizing, that the woods had just gotten into my head the way the woods sometimes do. That was 4 days ago. He set up his phone on the dresser, angled toward the bed. Told me he was doing it, showed me where it was. I watched him press record and I nodded and I fell asleep. Actually fell asleep. No trouble, which I told myself was a good sign. He sent me the files in the morning, 1 for each night, said he'd only watched the first hour of each before he stopped. I asked him why he stopped. He said he needed me to watch them first and tell him what I thought I was seeing, so I watched them. Night 1, nothing. 4 hours of me in bed moving the way you move when you're just asleep. Normal shifting. Normal. I exhaled for what felt like the first time in a week. Night 2. I watched myself sleep for about an hour and then I sit up. Not the way you sit up when something wakes you. No startle, no gradual rousing. One moment I'm horizontal and the next I'm vertical, all at once like a hinge. Upright in the dark with my hands in my lap. I sit like that for 11 minutes. I looked at the timestamp. 11 minutes, unmoving, eyes I had to zoom in, hands shaking, but yes, eyes open. Then I lie back down. I don't remember this. I don't remember any of it. I watched it 3 times and it still doesn't feel like me. The way I sit up is just wrong. The body is mine, but the movement is wrong. I almost didn't watch night 3. On night 3, I get up. I walk to the window. I stand there for a while. I didn't count this time. I couldn't, and then I turn around and face the room. Face the camera, though I couldn't have known where it was. My face is in shadow, but my eyes catch a little light from the window behind me. And then I just stand there, still, patient. And then I go back to bed. That's it. That's all that happens. There's nothing objectively terrible about this footage, and I know that, and I can't stop shaking. Here's what I keep coming back to. In the video, when I'm standing at the window, and this might be the light, this might be the compression. I'm not an expert on any of this, but my reflection in the glass doesn't quite match. The way I'm standing and the way the reflection is standing are off by just enough that I noticed. Just enough. Like the reflection is doing something slightly different. I've been staring at that frame for an hour. I can't get it to resolve either way. I called my sister again this morning. She picked up and immediately said, "Hey, are you okay?" Before I said anything. I said yes. Why? She said, "I've just had this feeling for a few days, Like I should check on you." She paused. "Also, you sound closer this time." I asked what she meant. "Last time you called, you sounded far away. Remember I said that? This time you sound closer, like more present. Is that good or bad?" I told her I didn't know. I've been sitting with that. I don't know if something receding feels like clarity or if something settling in feels like calm. I don't know which direction I'm moving. Dane and I haven't talked much today. He made dinner and we ate it. He asked if I wanted to watch something and I said sure, and we watched something and I don't remember what it was. After, he said my name and I looked up and he was watching me the way you watch something you're not completely sure of. The way you watch a stray dog that's been friendly so far. He said, "Where do you go?" I asked what he meant. "When you go somewhere, inside yourself or wherever it is." He looked at his hands. "Where do you go?" I didn't have an answer. I told him I wasn't sure I was the one going anywhere. He didn't respond to that. He went to the couch. I heard him pulling the blanket down, the particular sound of him settling into that cushion. He's been sleeping there for 8 nights now. I've stopped asking him to come back to bed. Part of me thinks that's the right call. Part of me, and this is the part I'm writing this down to get outside of my own head, this is the part I need someone else to witness. Part of me is very calm about all of it. About the video, about my sister, about Dane on the couch. Calm in a way that feels like altitude, like I've been up high long enough that the thinness of the air is just how air feels now. I don't trust that calm. I'm going to stay on the bathroom floor a little longer. If you read my last post and you're still here, and I know some of you are, I see the messages. I can't respond to all of them, but I read them. I need to ask you something. In the video, when I'm standing at the window, can something be wrong with a person from the inside out? Not like illness, like replacement, like a word you've read so many times it stops looking like a word. Can that happen to a self? I'm asking because I genuinely don't know. And I'm asking because I need to know whether there's a version of this where I get to stay. I'll update when I can. I think. Update. I went back to the woods. Not on purpose. That's what I keep telling myself, and I'm not sure it's true anymore. Dane drove me to my sister's yesterday. His idea, which surprised me, and then it didn't. He packed a bag for me, folded things. He's been very careful with me lately in the way that isn't tenderness, the way you're careful with something that might just tip over. He loaded my bag into the trunk and then stood by the car door and hugged me for a long time without saying anything, and when he let go, his face was doing something I didn't have a name for. He said, "Call me when you get there." I said I would. He watched the car until we turned the corner. I know because I watched him in the mirror the whole time. I wanted to see what his face did when he thought I couldn't see it anymore. It crumpled. Just for a second, then he went inside. My sister's name is Mara. I should have said that by now. Mara lives 40 minutes north, in a house that's too big for one person, which she knows and doesn't apologize for. She met me at the door and held my face in both hands the way she used to when we were kids, and I'd gotten hurt. This assessing look, inventory, checking for damage. Then she let go and said, "Okay," quietly, mostly to herself, and brought me inside. We didn't talk about it the first night. We watched television and ate crackers with things on them, and she fell asleep on the couch with her feet in my lap, and I sat there in the blue light and felt, for the first time in weeks, almost normal. Almost like the person I was before. Except, I didn't sleep that night. Not a full cycle. I lay in Mara's guest room and looked at the ceiling and felt settled. That's the word. Not tired, not wired, settled. The way sediment settles. The way a thing finds its level. I didn't like that word when it came to me. I tried to replace it. Couldn't. In the morning, Mara made coffee and looked at me over her mug and said, "You look different." I asked, "How?" "Rested." She frowned at herself. "No, not rested. That's not the right word." She looked out the window. "You look like you made a decision." I told her I hadn't made any decision. She nodded like that confirmed something she hadn't said out loud. Here is the part I don't know how to write down. This afternoon, Mara was at the store. I was alone in the house, which I've been fine with, which is part of it, I think, how fine I've been with things that should bother me. I was sitting at her kitchen table, and I looked out the sliding glass door at the backyard. The yard backs up to a tree line. Not deep woods, just the edge of something. I don't remember standing up. I remember being at the glass, my hand on the handle, and the door was already open. And the air coming in smelled like all of it, like that trip, like whatever those 12 days were, and I stood there in the opening with one foot inside and one foot on the back step, and I just waited. Like something was supposed to happen, like I was keeping an appointment. I came back in when I heard Mara's car in the driveway. I closed the door, I sat back down. When she came in with the groceries, I said, "Need help?" And she said, "No, I got it." And I watched her put things away, and she smiled at me and I smiled back. I don't think she noticed my feet. They were wet. My socks were wet, like I'd been in the grass, and I hadn't been in the grass. I had not walked out that door. I was there, and then I was here, and there was no in between I can account for. I took my socks off in the bathroom and put them in the trash. I've been thinking about what Dane asked me. Where do you go? I've been thinking about that maybe the more honest question is what comes back. I read somewhere once, and I know how this sounds. I know that certain things don't take you all at once. They do it the way water gets into old wood. Slow, patient. By the time you notice the warping, the water has been there a long time. I keep thinking about the reflection in the window, the way it was doing something slightly different. I keep thinking, what if it wasn't behind? What if it was ahead? Mara knocked on the guest room door an hour ago and asked if I wanted to call Dane together, like the three of us, just to talk. I said yes. We called him, and his face on the screen did something complicated when he saw me, and he said, "How are you doing?" And I said, "Better, I think." And I watched him want so badly to believe that. We talked for 20 minutes. Normal things. He's watering my plants, he said. He's been feeding the cat. He said he missed me. I said I missed him too. When we hung up, Mara turned to me and said, "Do you want me to sleep in here tonight, in the room with you?" I asked her why. She took a minute, looked at the window, looked back at me. "Because," she said, "you're my sister, and I'd like to know in the morning that you're still here." I told her yes. Please. I told her to leave the light on. I'm writing this with Mara asleep in the other bed. She's facing me. Even asleep, she's facing me. The tree line is right there past the window. It's dark. I can't see anything in it. The calm is here again. That altitude feeling. That thinning air. And I need to tell you something. Because I said I would be honest. Because that's the only reason I'm still here writing any of this down. The calm isn't scared of the dark out there. The calm knows what's in it. I'll update when I can. I think. I've been staring at the blank text box for 20 minutes. I keep writing the first line and deleting it. I don't know how to start because I don't know how to tell you what happened without you thinking I'm lying, or worse, without you thinking I'm fine. I'm not fine, but I'm here. I think that matters. Dane took me to the bowling alley. I know, I'd asked for lights and noise and people, and he delivered, I guess, in the most Dane way possible. Fluorescent overheads, a birthday party happening in Lane 7, a teenager working the shoe counter who looked like he wanted to be anywhere else. I almost laughed when we walked in. Almost. I watched myself very carefully the whole time. Here's what I noticed. The noise didn't bother me. That's not unusual on its own. But there was a moment in Lane 4, a woman maybe 60 years old. She was bowling badly and laughing about it. Her whole family was laughing with her, and I felt something move through me that I can only describe as interest. Not warmth, not the way you feel when you see something sweet and you smile without meaning to. It was quieter than that, more deliberate, like cataloging. I excused myself to the bathroom. I ran cold water over my wrists and looked in the mirror and said my own name out loud. That's the thing I've started doing. Saying my name, checking if it still feels like mine. It did. I think it did. Dane got a strike while I was gone. He texted me 3 exclamation points. I stood in the bathroom stall reading that text, and I felt something real and soft crack open in my chest. Something that was just him. Just us. Just the fact that he bowled a strike and wanted to tell me immediately, even now, even after everything. I held on to that the way you press on a bruise to make sure it still hurts. It still hurt. That felt like good news. We ate terrible nachos and I bowled a 74, and Dane beat me by 40 pins, and on the drive home he held my hand across the center console, his thumb moving back and forth across my knuckles. I watched our hands the whole drive. I fell asleep in the car. I don't know what happened in that gap. 20-minute drive. I came back to myself in the passenger seat, parked in our lot, Dane watching me with his hand still in mine. "You were out," he said. "You okay?" I said yes. I don't know if that was true. The recording from last night. Silence, silence, and then at 3:40 a.m., a sound I've been trying to identify for 6 hours. It's not footsteps. It's not the door. It's something lower, almost subsonic, more like a pressure than a sound. And it lasts for exactly 11 seconds, and then the recording goes quiet again until my alarm at 7. I played it for Dane this morning. He listened with the phone close to his ear. His face didn't do anything for a long moment, and then he set the phone down on the kitchen table very gently and said, "I heard that from the couch last night. I thought it was the building." It's not the building. I've been Googling things I don't want to have in my search history. Sleepwalking, yes, but also other things. Dissociation, shared delusion, whether it's possible to be afraid of yourself and also in some small, quiet way, not afraid enough. I found my first post again in a tab I'd left open. Read it like a letter from a stranger. The voice is mine, the fear is mine, but there's something underneath both of them. Even in that first post, even when I was just confused and reaching for an explanation, something that was very patient and very still. I think it's been waiting for me to stop performing the fear. I don't know what happens after that. Here's what I'm holding on to. I called my sister back. I told her something was wrong. Not all of it, not the recordings, or the leaf, or the way I watched that woman in the bowling alley like she was something to be understood rather than someone to smile at, but the shape of it. Enough. She went quiet in a way that meant she was already looking at her calendar. She's coming Friday. Dana's still here. He moved back into the bedroom last night. He didn't say anything about it, just carried his pillow back down the hall, and I lay there listening to him breathe, and I thought, I want to still be someone he can sleep next to. I held that thought up and looked at it for a long time. It felt like mine. I think that's still enough to work with. But I keep thinking about what I wrote before something that was always in the woods found a door, and the door was me, and I keep landing on the part I didn't say. Doors work both ways. I don't know which direction I'm walking. Please keep reading. Please keep responding. I need to know you can still hear me. I need to know I still want you to.